one of the main things expected to be talked is China, which I want to turn now to our third topic, which is that U.S. China conversation when it comes to TikTok. I think the conversation about TikTok obviously has to deal more than just an app where we think we're watching videos and having fun. The conversation is around national security, which I want to start with you here, Alejandro. Give us a little bit of context here, right? Why is it that the United States sees TikTok as such an important or possibly controversial app? The ownership comes from a company in China, but there were many hearings where they were saying, hey, okay, what's the role of China here? When it comes to national security, why is that a topic when it comes to TikTok? What's your analysis here?
I think one of the first things that we need to understand is that um, any corporation that's derived from China has a CCP ownership. They have a backdoor to it, like no ifs and or buts. Like if the government in China wants something to do with your business, they're walking in, taking over, or they're creating backdoors into that. And that's important to note. I've been a big advocate for anti-TikTok because of the national security issues. It could be served as a cultural Trojan horse where you actually can start creating propaganda that changes people's minds, right? We are not as strong as we think we are. I think one of the studies that they did earlier, I don't remember who did it specifically, but they showed the difference in timelines. In China, TikTok had like chess, mathematics, education, pro-Chinese nationalism. And then you look at the one here and it's brain rot. It's slop, it's AI, it's things that are just kind of melting your brain from one perspective. And it's such a generational concept, right? It's about Gen Alpha, Gen Z elements. And so when you want to really change the society, it's not changing the people who are currently in power, but really about planting a long-term seed game from that perspective. I think it's incredibly intelligent of the administration to set these boundaries, having American companies own about 80% of it. I'm still kind of hesitant about that 20%. If you're still at the table, you still have influence in some way, shape, or form of that licensing. I want to understand who has access to those servers, who's going to be able to program the algorithms, who's going to be in charge of the national security element of the domestic element of the United States, and what is the relationship that the parent company ByteDance will have in terms of access to these things. But I think this is not only a national security issue, but this is also a cultural issue. If you really want to change the minds of a nation, you start through their number one consumption devices, which is right now, unfortunately, our mobile TikTok devices. And they make it so addicting, right? You can get likes, you can get multi-million views. They actually pump your content in a perspective that actually creates this element of addiction to the devices where a generation is glued to their phones and can create radicalization, whether right or left, if the right propaganda is put in place. So I think that's why it's such a big national security issue because of the access, the type of content that's being derived or pushed through the algorithm, and then also what it's going to do from our economic perspective. I think TikTok Shop is one of the largest shopping networks. Like, it's become a national competitor to some of our own American companies like Amazon, Walmart, and things of that nature. So it's just going to be interesting to see how the algorithm is going to be pushed through with this new 80% American ownership.
Alejandro, I want to continue with you. What kind of precedent does this set for the future? Because typically, I think this is going to be a little bit of a new model where one, the U.S. is part of the negotiations, the U.S. government, right? They're bringing in sort of U.S. companies, private companies to the table, but where it's this sort of joint ownership where the U.S. almost brokered the deal. Is this something that you think China will now say, hey, how can we do more of this? How can we begin to position ourselves as a number one company within the United States and not have to give up complete ownership, have the U.S. government be part of the negotiations, and almost the U.S. government, what does, it's almost, it gives a blessing to the partnership, it gives a blessing to this company within the U.S. Again, not just from a national security point of view, but like you said, when it comes to TikTok and the economy, it's a huge competitor to Amazon, to Walmart, and all these places. Do you think if this deal does go through, is this a new model that China will lean in more into?
It's an interesting question. I think for me, it's a bittersweet situation because I believe in the free markets. I believe that the market should be able to regulate itself. Government should regulate, not participate in the private sector markets, right? So this is kind of one of those overreaches where I'm kind of like, I'm kind of there's this tension between, okay, it's happening and why it should happen. Um, the government shutdown of TikTok earlier this year created a lot of backlash from a generational standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
right? Tens of millions of people came forward. A lot of people depend on the digital economy for their livelihood, right? It's a $2.75 trillion economy. Think about that. When you think of elements, people pay their rent, people pay groceries, people pay their bills, people pay their cars, people pay their cell phone bill because of the content they're creating on these platforms like Instagram, like WhatsApp, like Facebook, like Twitter, like X, and here in TikTok. It's become an economic resource for the everyday American, right? So when you think about it from that perspective, it creates a dangerous precedent, right? But it doesn't say that it's different from, let's say, China owning specific stocks in specific companies, right? Like you can still purchase in the free market if
Yeah.
they take a certain percentage from that. What is really worrisome for me is having the state participate in this, right? From that perspective of brokering, of negotiating, from that element. I see it from as a pro in defending American liberties and
Mm-hmm.
stepping in and saying, hey, this is a national security issue. We need the private sector to step up. And at the same time, it's kind of concerning because it will set a precedent where China can create another app or create another program or create another platform to the extent of influence that TikTok has and forces America once again to get involved in a trade deal or trade situation where leverage can be utilized against us and not for us.
Yeah, it really speaks to the rise and influence of tech and why here in the United States we need to continue to lean into innovation, continue to make sure that we're not creating burdensome regulations that don't allow our generations of entrepreneurs, of innovators to thrive and to move forward. Because in an ideal world, we continue to be the lead when it comes to creating either systems, creating tech, semiconductors, or platforms, and we don't have to even find ourselves here in this
Mhm.
situation. I do want to ask Judy to one of the points that Alejandro talked on the cultural side. It was interesting to see. I mean, this was during the Biden administration where they did announce sort of that TikTok was going to possibly disappear in the United States. It no longer was going to be available. And you saw a wide range of people come out and speak. But the reality is, and the facts are, what Alejandro pointed is that many times when you look at the timeline, um, in China, it's science, it's math, it's educational, it's almost like community based, very pro China. And in the U.S., almost there's been evidence that they're pushing anything, people street fighting, chaos, or even some sort of sexual content. I mean, there's a lot that they're pushing out there. So when Biden made this announcement, there was also the young generation who came out and said, "Hey, don't take this away from me, right? This is where I like consume my information or consume my entertainment." But then you also saw a lot of parents come out and saying like, "Well, we do think there needs to be a lot of intervention, a broker deal." Could this be something very positive for the Trump administration? Is this something where parents say, "Good, now we're expecting a better platform," and where younger generations say like, "Hey, I still have TikTok."
Yeah, I can tell you as the mom of a teenager, she was really concerned that she was
Mhm.
gonna lose her TikTok. But of course they don't know any better. I think China understands that the moral decay of a society, especially a
Mhm.
free society like the United States of America, is is for them a good thing. It gives them it gives them an upper hand when it comes to everything. We've seen what can happen when there's moral decay in our society and our children are fed really negative things, and the fact that they have such access to it, desensitization to so many things. Um,
Mhm.
it really messes with our foundational freedoms,
Yeah.
principles, values. And so I think TikTok is just the tip of the spear. We need to have a broader thinking of US China tech engagement. And President Trump himself said that TikTok was very beneficial to his campaign. Alejandro mentioned it too. You know how so many businesses really count on TikTok because of the broad reach. But we need to be really smart, about this. We need to make sure that there's data security, and the devil's going to be in the details. You know, the algorithm access, the intellectual property. You know, how much does the U.S. really control? How much access do we have to the back end of this thing? It's going to be an interesting ride. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
Yeah, and we don't have those details yet. I think that's what everyone's sort of waiting for. I
Yes.
think they see this as a good step forward in the sense that, hey, there's conversations being had. The deadline was right now in September where TikTok would again sort of be banned within the United States. They've extended that timeline because of the negotiations and conversations they had. So soon enough.
National security.
I
needs
think
to
one of
come
the things I
first.
want
We
to add to
cannot
that.
sell the rope that we're going to hang ourselves with. So this is the time to really establish the baseline, the guidelines of how we're going to move forward with these type of partnerships.
100%.
Because it's not going away.
It's going to be essential. Yeah, again, tech and sort of technology is just front and center when it comes to all this.